Welcome to the Jack Reacher Review. My name's Jamie Emerson, and this is our review, the Jack Reacher Review of The Visitor, or as it was known in the United States of America, Running Blind. Reacher's Running Blind. Because, do you know why they didn't want that title? Because they said, in America, people are going to think The Visitor is about aliens. So he's got to be running blind. Terrible title in America. Much better title in the UK. The Visitor. Because it's about a visitor. Specifically, it's about a visitor who wants to kill you. It's about a serial killer. And this is a rarity in the Reacher series in that it is so much of that Silence of the Lambs style serial killer book. Reacher's tracking a serial killer, and it's refreshing. Reacher doesn't often do that. This is the fourth Reacher book in the series, published in the year 2000, and it starts off with Reacher being roped into, basically, blackmailed, essentially, into helping the FBI track a serial killer. He's basically getting himself into a little bit of trouble by, well, I don't want to spoil it. It's a pretty cool and very Reacher-ish starting out, where he's found himself a nice little Italian restaurant that he really likes in New York City, near to where he lives. That's right, Reacher has a house at the start of this one. He inherited it from Leon Garber at the end of the last book. The last book, the third book, was Tripwire, and I've always felt that Tripwire is kind of the end of a trilogy. If you didn't want to read any more of the Reacher series, but you, for some reason, really liked them, but didn't want to read more than 3 of them, the first 3 books do fill a little trilogy. And at the end of that, it kind of looks like Reacher has his lifestyle's run its course, he's seen the country, and he's got a house and he's settling down. I think, given the success of the series, there was pressure on Lee Child to say, maybe we should get rid of that house, eh? So this is kind of the story of Reacher going back on the road, of losing that house, of getting rid of that house and returning to the lifestyle that then leads us to dozens more books. So Reacher is living near New York. He's got a house, and he's also found a restaurant that he really likes, and the restaurant is being targeted by mobsters who are protection racketeering, and he gets involved in that. And this brings him onto the FBI's radar, who then use this against him and say, look, we're going to come down on you like a ton of bricks if you don't help us catch this killer. And they say that we need your help because, look, you're involved with some of his victims. And Reacher is involved with these victims going back to his days as an MP, as a military policeman. And so it begins. And it's really nice book. It's refreshing. It's a bit different to the other Reachers. Thematically, we're looking at things like misogyny. Specifically misogyny in the army, because a lot of these victims of the serial killer are people women who've had bad experiences in the army because of sexism, harassment, misogyny, and rape. Reacher's been involved with them in his role as military policeman. And there's some nice work on that. There's some nice explorations of what that must be like for these women, and how organisations like the army have struggled, and I hope they continue to struggle. I'm sure it's a continual struggle to make themselves an environment in which women are as at home as men. Also, one of the big themes is, of course, restlessness. Reacher has this nagging sense, and he calls it like the hobo demon. It's like he's got a monkey on his back or a devil on his shoulder who keeps just whispering, saying, you just don't want to settle down. You've got to keep moving. You've got itchy feet. Come on, let's go. You can see the country. Come on. You don't want to be in one place. Come on. And that's cool. That's nice. I think it's like psychologically realistic, and this book is pretty much the end of that. Reacher then just throws himself into that lifestyle and never looks back. Really nice things about this book include Lee Child's use of the second person. So at the start of a lot of the chapters, you get second person sections which are written to you as if you are the killer. And that really effectively puts you in the killer's shoes, and it's cool because it gives you access to clues about who the killer may or may not be. The sense of a puzzle in this book is incredibly strong, and it is a genuine puzzle. The murders are a puzzle, the identity of the killer is a puzzle, and I was gripped by this until the very end, and I'll admit to being totally wrong-footed by the revelation of the killer's identity, but the revelation is so good and the writing and plotting has been so tight that it's the kind of book where you instantly want to go back and you want to read those first-person sections for clues that you missed, and sure enough, you do miss those clues. It's an honest con. It's an honest mystery. Lee Childs, it's laying it all out there for you, but you might miss it. It's very much in that Silence of the Lambs style, but one of the interesting points of difference between this book and, say, Silence of the Lambs is its take on the nature of profiling, criminal profiling. And reading this book, I was reminded of an article that Malcolm Gladwell, big Reacher fan, everything comes back to Reacher in the end, Malcolm Gladwell wrote a piece in The New Yorker in the year 2007, and the piece is called Dangerous Minds, and the subtitle is Criminal Profiling Made Easy. And if you like Malcolm Gladwell, this is prime Gladwell. This is Gladwell setting you up with some assumptions and then piece by piece taking apart the assumptions until you're left totally on side with Malcolm Gladwell. And Malcolm Gladwell in this really comes out hard against criminal profiling, and specifically criminal profiling and the way that perhaps real advocates of profiling, you know, the kind of FBI Quantico style of profiling, basically might be wasting a lot of people's time, not deliberately, but the whole nature of profiling, it's kind of like horoscopes. You end up just writing very, very, very generic accounts or incredibly specific accounts that present like opportunity costs to law enforcement. If you follow these profiles, you might miss the actual nuts and bolts detective work that Gladwell believes you need to do to solve crimes, and Reacher certainly believes that you need to solve crimes. There's a lot of conflict in this book between Reacher and one of the FBI agents about the whole nature of profiling. But the Malcolm Gladwell article really kind of summarises this, so I'm just going to quote a little bit from the article. They're talking about some detectives in Wichita who are hunting a killer, and they've got some FBI profilers talking to them. So this is what the FBI says in Gladwell's words. The best minds in the FBI had given the Wichita detectives a blueprint for their investigation. Look for an American male with a possible connection to the military. His IQ will be above 105. He will like to masturbate and will be aloof and selfish in bed. He'll drive a decent car. He'll be a now person. He won't be comfortable with women, but he may have women friends. He'll be a lone wolf, but he will be able to function in social settings. He won't be unmemorable, but he will be unknowable. He will either never married, divorced, or married, and if he was or is married, his wife will be younger or older. He may or may not live in a rental, and might be lower class, upper lower class, lower middle class, or middle class, and he'll be crazy like a fox, as opposed to being mental. Now, that isn't actually... I mean, Malcolm Gladwell's writing that for effect, but some of this comes up in The Visitor. It's this idea of, look, this is kind of snake oil. You might think what you're doing is useful and helpful, but really we need to follow basic procedures, and Reacher's fully in favour of that, as he's reluctantly teamed with an FBI profiler. One thing that's incredibly unsettling about The Visitor, or Running Blind, is the nature of the crimes that Reach is trying to solve. They're not gory, but they are incredibly unnerving, and it does fill you with a sense of dread, especially in the final act, as one victim, the next victim, is being targeted. And of course you've got Lee Child's nice little technique of writing these second-person sections aimed at you, and you're in the shoes of the killer, and it really ups the tension an awful lot. The Visitor might not be typical of Reacher. It's a lot more focused and a lot more narrow focused than a lot of the Reacher books, and there is perhaps a lack of action until the very end, but I find it really, really gripping. Very interesting premise, and it's the kind of story that we don't often get from Reacher. If you like the serial killer genre, if you like that Silence of the Lambs style thriller, you'll love this. And if you're a Reacher fan and you want to see Reacher tackling something a bit different, this is definitely the book for you. We give it 3 stars. It's not absolutely prime Reacher, but it's a really, really solid book. Very tense, very interesting. If you'd like to hear more from the Jack Reacher Review, we've got a podcast on the way in which we take a deep dive into the first act. So, not even the whole book. We're looking specifically at the beginning of Killing Floor, which might be the best beginning of any book in the history of all thrillers. It's amazeballs. Please, check it out. If you're interested in Killing Floor, if you've read the book and liked it, if you've read it a long time ago and forgotten it, dust it down, get it out. Read along with us with our podcast. Visit our website, www.jackreacherreview.com, for articles about people like Malcolm Gladwell and his love of Reacher. We've got articles on there about Lee Child, about Reacher, about the films, about the books, about the possible TV show. Check that out. If you disagree with our review, if you agree with our review, leave us a polite, apolitical comment in the comments below. Thank you very much for listening.